The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. Black. This is Dennis from Dig Boston in the podcast, So What Do You Really Do? How are you today?
Oh, just delightful. It's really like the winter to keep going. I'd like there to be more problems behind the problems. I'd like to know what's stacked up next behind. Really, it's just beyond belief. It's really beyond belief.
Okay. Well, you got a lot of these interviews.
But otherwise, I'm great. I'm just great.
Other than, impending dread and doom, everything's fine. Just living the nightmare.
Everything's just great.
Do you have a lot of these interviews to do today?
No, there was just one this morning, and then I saw my shrink, so I'm really prepared to talk to you.
Perfect. Excellent. And by the way, let's talk about this because we'll open up with this because it's super current, but also I feel like you have an interesting perspective on it because if I remember correctly, you're a descendant of Jewish Russians. So the situation going in Ukraine right now, as both a political satirist and somebody whose heritage is from there, how is that going for you?
Well, we left, didn't we?
There's a reason for it, I'm sure.
Okay. I mean, a long time ago because they were coming after us. So there was a thing called pogroms, and we got out of there in the early 1900s. But my grandparents fled. So really, I've never really rooted for the team.
Oh yeah, see, I forgot about the math because you're 72, right? And your mother's 100, so I didn't do the math of it was the early 1900s. I was thinking like,
they came
most
families, over
families,
way early.
Yeah. I was just in my head thinking like Ellis Island days or something like that, but I forgot that your family heritage goes a lot farther back right now.
Well, it's not. It really is the early 1900s where they kind of rolled in, after wandering about a bit.
And talking about current subject and stuff like that, do you find it difficult to keep up with the fast-paced news cycle that we're at? Like things we just blow through so quickly. What different stories are going on? Do you feel it's difficult to keep up with it and stay current?
I don't really, it's like I kind of work on my act, which is at this point is only my act, which is only somewhat. I do some current things, and I do this thing called the Ranch's Do, which takes place afterwards, where we're in front of the audience. So when I'm in Boston, we've done it before. It's a live feed that goes throughout the world, and folks from the Boston who are in the audience. If you're coming that night, it's you write in a rant. I'll read it if it works. I read a lot of the stuff that comes in from the folks in Boston, and then the folks in Massachusetts, or somebody who lived in Boston has got something to say, or if it's something that like somebody from there was recently somebody in Canada was yelling about the truckers, so it was somebody who had some interesting information, so I read what they had to say. They were yelling about the guys on the border there. So that's really where a lot of the current stuff comes out at this point, and I comment on it. But the fast pace of it is, in the sense, it's fast paced, but it's the same. Nothing's changed. Now we're in the Ukraine, okay? What were we in before that? We were literally in there's COVID, there's no COVID, there's COVID, there's no COVID, there's mask, don't wear mask, maybe you should wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Now there's then there was voting stuff, vote, don't vote, people should vote. It's always, literally, I do the intro to the Rantcast, and it's like literally the same three things that are happening. There's variations on a theme. This one is big and new. This one is huge and horrifying.
Have you found, I love that your shows are becoming, that you're adapting and making your shows interactive. That is an interesting thing to do because some people kind of get bogged down.
Well, it's been, here's what's really interesting. It's 6 years I've been doing it, and it really doesn't seem to have pierced in certain ways really what we're doing. I mean, it goes around the world. I mean, people in this. We were just in California, and it was people in Australia who were watching it, or folks who were waking up in Scotland. I mean, that and we've been doing it for 6 years.
Well, speaking on the, that's a huge technological advancement in comedy, is that you're streaming it out to everybody across the country. During the pandemic, when a lot of things switched to being online and Zoom comedy and so distanced, remote podcast interviews, TV segments, and stuff like that, did you find it difficult to try and keep up with that level of technology, or were you?
I wasn't doing that. I didn't. No Zoom, no Zoom comedy. No. To me, it was never comedy. To me, it's To me, it's the road to really a road to some form of psychosis. I'm not going to sit there in front of a bunch of squares, with people inside them. And no, I would do Q&As with kids and stuff like that, but I'm not doing stand-up sitting in my desk.
It's like you're talking to the Brady Bunch intro.
Yeah, or you're also, it's Hollywood Squares without Paul Lynde.
You know what? That's what Zoom comedy needed, a good Charles Nelson Riley.
Exactly. So I never, there were people who did it and enjoyed it. It was not something I enjoyed. I need to work in front of an audience live because that's where I write. That's really, so it was like, it was having, it was like I was being cut off because I could not. I would do these. Started the Rantcast. That's what I did. When I was kind of when I couldn't get out on the road, and the thing was that I could stay in touch with my sense of comedy because what I was really good at, where I knew how to, because I'd spent all that time on the Daily Show and on my own as a performer, I knew how to do a rant. I knew how to read somebody's rant. I knew how to make that funny, and I knew how to comment on it. And so that was really what was my lifeline. And what was amazing before the shutdown was how well written the stuff was. And what's really amazing about it is it's like an old time TV show in which it's me standing in front of a microphone, and it's written by the people in the city I'm in.
That's interesting that you are a on-stage writer. Me as a comedian myself, I also feel like I'm a stage writer. Like I feel that fight or flight moment when I'm talking about a subject, that fight or flight moment to come up with a punchline in the moment works better with my process. And then I go back and I hone things down and I go through a writing process. Do you think your ability to write on stage and write in the moment in front of people comes from your earlier days as a playwright when you're literally having to write for people in the room in front of you?
Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with I think the playwriting certainly fed into it, and in a lot of ways it was tougher. Playwriting is, to me, tougher in a lot of ways than stand-up. I'm sure there are people who disagree with that, but the thing is you're creating this group of characters to create a reality, and then you have to have the audience buy into the creation. That's so it's tough. But that was really, it was the writing a dialogue, and that was, and then it was kind of like, so I basically became the character.
And when it comes to writing your stand-up as opposed to writing for segments for The Daily Show, is there a different process? Like on The Daily Show, do you have a group of people to bounce ideas off of? Are they both still kind of improvised?
The difference is that I originally wrote all of the stuff. Then they brought in, then we started showing those clips, so they brought in people to work with me. I never was a great punchline person without an audience, so I was doing it once a week or once every 2 weeks. and I would come in, and these guys were really good at it, and I kind of would throw stuff in, and we would watch these things. And what I would kind of do is take what they had, put it together, then they'd take it, they'd hone it down, then I would hone it, and then they would finish it off, and then and that went on for a while, and then there were a couple of producers who came in who didn't think it was funny, and that I didn't write enough.
Really?
Yeah, and didn't. They felt that my attitude. They didn't quite get that. What was funny was my attitude. I mean, that seemed to escape them. So they started cutting lines that I wrote, and writers that I work with went, he's been doing this line on stage for 10 years. It gets a huge laugh, and they would say, literally, I quote, "We can do better than that." So, so this is when I was kind of at the, doing, just broken through and started performing in theaters and had a special on HBO. Really? So okay. So then I just realized I'm gonna I could fight him on this, but it was ridiculous. I said, okay, you want to pay me to do this? Write whatever you want, and then and that was really where I said, I'm acting, so I can read whatever you give me and make it in my voice, and that was what I did, and then it kind of came back to me again when those guys left, and it came more and more back toward me. And then when Trevor came on, there's been some more of my involvement in it, and he occasionally lets me, because of this kind of social media stuff we've got. If I would flip out in front of an audience and just start yelling stuff, and then they would cut that and put it online, which is great. And that
out of curiosity,
and that didn't occur with before. So for me, I've been through 25 years of it. It's like unbelievable. And I don't really know where we're at now. I'm doing it just before I come up there. I'll be doing the Daily Show. Hopefully, if all goes well, it'll be on a week from Wednesday or Thursday.
That's interesting to hear the behind the scenes things like that, especially someone who's been like you've been with it so long. Out of curiosity, the producers who didn't trust you, was that during the Craig Kilborn days or the Jon Stewart days?
Oh no, that was in Kilborn. No, that was when I was writing it on my own. And then
okay.
At first I wrote it. I mean, I didn't even write it on my own. But the first 5 that I did, I improv'd.
Oh, I remember watching the first episode when I was a kid, watching the first episode, and you just smoking away while ranting. I'm like, oh, this is everything I want to be when I grow up, right there.
So that was really where it started, and then and it was with Jon Stewart that these guys came in, and you could actually, there's this Daily Show oral history, and that was where I found out about some of it. Was what they had talked about.
Speaking of your lengthy history in both comedy and Daily Show and just being a writer, do you ever have concerns that sometimes your material may not have aged so well? I remember an old bit of yours, and the reason I remember this specifically is because Drew Carey also had one that was very similar. They're both different jokes, but they're in the same topic of global warming, where you're both talking about spraying spraying spray paint or hairspray just because it's so cold out. Are you concerned with this day and age where there's such an outcry about global warming stuff? Do you feel that something like that, or in general, your comedy may not age well?
I can't worry about that. I mean, I'm hoping to get to Thursday.
That's the perfect answer. Thank you.
Kidding me? Worry about that? No, I mean, no, I don't. I mean, I don't really. And some of it, people will say, boy, that still really applies, and I'm amazed. So who knows?
Excellent. And I will tell you this. I graduated high school in 1999, and right after high school, my friend joined the Marine Corps. And 2 years later, he got drafted right in Afghanistan. And everything's fine and whatnot. But after his first return home, after basic training, we talked about a lot of things, and I was really getting into comedy then. And then a few years later, he came back and was talking about it's the first time I'd seen him since he left. or since that first boot camp return. And he talked about you. He saw you on a USO tour, and just talked about you for the entire time. He really enjoyed it. He never watched a Daily Show. He never knew anything about you until he saw you on that USO tour. And what I'm wondering is, because a lot of people in the military seem to be very conservative, whereas you seem to be, I would say it's comfortable to say, very much liberal in your politics. Do you sometimes worry about the people you're performing for on like a USO tour or in general don't share your same views on politics and may become disingenuous?
Well, I didn't really do politics there, and the thing that we do agree on is that one thing that you can pretty much count on in the service is those people don't like authority either. so I didn't really, I didn't do much in terms of politics. I had a lot of stuff that I could talk about and be around the edges of it, because basically, until the madness, which is what we're in just total madness and denial, and there's a fight by a lot of people who seem to be my age and somewhat younger, to get back to 1956. That seems to be the target date. They ever since color TVs were invented, they seem to have had a breakdown. So, look at those people are a different color. So, I've always been, it's been equal opportunity. Because I basically kind of go, and a lot of what I've said is during the course of it is I may be I've said this from time to time, I'm a socialist, but basically the only way stuff gets done in this country, my job is to say, let's go here, and then the job of the other side is to go, no, we can't do that. So that's the deal. That's how you negotiate. It's all about being in the middle, you fucking idiots.
Excellent.
It really is. I mean, that's really the bottom line of it. So, I mean, I said that, and that was really another revelation. Was when I kind of went, "Wow, they've driven me so nuts now that I'm in the middle. They've driven me to the middle."
Out of curiosity, since you said your politics are socialist, are you a Bernie supporter? Because I love his views and stuff, but I also find him to be so hilariously cartoonish that I can't take him seriously.
Well, I mean, I like a lot of what he says, of course. I mean, look, that's who I got. So, and they say, AOC is, but I don't know if she's a bona fide. No, I don't know. And I certainly don't. I'm not at they think like, oh boy, like I got a club somewhere. There's like a socialist club. Go back for, 75 years, you fucking. That's when people were really, there was a party. There was a real socialist party that was a kind of seen as a kind of a threat, much at times. Bernie is like, that's my, and he's the, that's it. I got one pitcher. We don't have 8 other players, okay? What's the threat? And for the Republicans and for the Democrats to be completely incompetent when it comes to getting across the message that they're not socialist is beyond belief. How stupid are you? You really are incompetent. The Democrats don't seem to know how to tell you what it is that they want to do, and the Republicans don't seem to know how to tell you what they're not going to do.
It's kind of a what's that Buffalo Springfield lyric? If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with.
Yeah, that's it's Stephen Stills, I think. Or actually, it's what's his name? David. Fuck. God damn it.
Wasn't Stephen Stills the lead singer of Buffalo Springfield?
Yeah, but he was also Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But I don't think it was with that. I'm not sure it was that. My brain is shot.
We'll move on from guess that song lyric.
Yeah, really, name that tune.
And I'm always curious at what point, because I always feel, as a stand-up myself, I've always said that stage persona, like for me, on stage is the real me. Off stage, I have to hold back a little bit to be more palatable to people. I get very energetic. I'm very boisterous. I'm very animated on stage, and I feel like in life around people, to be palatable, I have to quail it down. But I've always said stand-up comedians are the best, at least, are themselves on stage, only amplified. And I'm curious with someone like you who is very boisterous and differently energetic. At what point does the Lewis Black on stage character shift into the reality of who Lewis Black is?
If that was my character, I'd be dead. If that was who I was all the time, I could be good for 3 days, and then they'd say, "Well, he's going to have to go to the hospital. I think his heart burst." No, I think it was. I think that basically it's a big blown up version of myself. And what it allowed me to do was to kind of be more myself off stage, really. So I was able to get rid of a lot of it.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of comedians who said that being on stage helped them come out and be more extroverted, because they were able to learn how to be exuberant on stage, and it helped them a lot more in their life. And the last question I'm going to ask you is a question I asked almost every single comedian, and I never quite get the right answer. So if you, I always, because everyone thinks there's a right or wrong with it, and there's not. I just think it's a question that's very only to us as comedians, and that is, do you think of yourself as a writer or a performer? As in, you perform because you have the need to write, or you write because you have the need to perform?
I perform because...
And you can't say both.
Huh? Well, I can say this.
You can't say both.
Of course. I can say that, I perform because I couldn't find anybody else who wanted to do this shit. So okay. I got stuck with it.
I like that answer. Yeah, I'm a very, throughout my career of everything I do, I'm a behind the scenes guy, I'm an in front of the mic guy, in front of the camera, behind the camera. I do all things as, quote unquote Renaissance man almost, because growing up, if I wanted to do these things, there was nobody else who knew how to work a camera. There was nobody else who knew how to edit audio. So I had to do all of that.
Yeah.
And I really empathize with you saying that.
Well, it's also, the other thing is everything you do, because they always say, which do you like best? I said, they all feed into each other. Everything you do feeds into everything else. So you're doing exactly what you should be doing if you want to, it all helps, everything feeds on everything else. Everything allows for that. There's nothing, it allows for that, your evolution as a performer or as a writer or as a director, or any of those things that you enter into allows the other things you want to be to become better.
Excellent. And then the schlocky plug question for this is, what can people in Boston at the Emerson Colonial Theater expect from the new Off the Rails tour on March 11th?
Their lives will be changed for the better. And if they go home in the next 3 days, if they don't come to the show, this won't happen. But if they come to the show within 3 days, there will be a massive check in the mail. I don't know where it comes from. And they'll either win a lottery or it'll be something from some sort of a absolute mess up in PPE money. But that's the kind of thing that happens after my shows. It's unbelievable. What they can expect is is really the second half. I did the Thanks for Risking Your Life, which was a special that I did, really kind of an intimate special that I did the last day. It was the last performance that I did, and I think the last recorded performance by a comic in the country before the shutdown. And this really is what I'm doing now is the next special, and that's what they're going to see, which is the fastest I've ever written anything. in front of an audience or anywhere, and that it's it needs some tweaking here and there, but it's basically that was the shutdown, and then this is what happened while I was in the shutdown.
Excellent. And
the other thing people should know about is that if they're in Indianapolis, I happen to be for at least this year the chairman of the board of the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library. It's an extraordinary museum, and that devoted to Vonnegut and the things that were of importance to him. And they do some really great work with the community and throughout the country, and are growing and expanding, and really keeping his work alive. And so I work with them, and that's well worth people's time. And then they also should try to get, if you like comedy, you have to go to Jamestown, New York, and see the National Comedy Center, which is an unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. It's interactive, and it was built literally with 10 minutes to go on the clock in terms of preserving a lot of what before things got lost. So, like the Smothers Brothers had 2 trailers filled with stuff, and they didn't know what to do with it. And so this place is really exceptional in that sense, and I'm proud to be a part of that.
Oh, well, that sounds like a very innovative and fun, different thing for someone of your talents and experience to do. So I'm glad that that's something that is going to be fun for you and something that you are a part of.
Yeah, no, it's been huge. I mean, it was really it gave me. I've been working at a theater that during those summers, and that kind of fell apart. They hired an asshole. So it was really, it came at this right time where I knew Kelly Carlin, and she had just given her stuff to George, her father. She gave his stuff to them, and she said, "You really should take a look at this and see what you think." And I was all in, and haven't regretted it, and think what they've done is astonishing. And people who love comedy really should get up there. It's well worth it. It's a beautiful part of the country. You got a casino there. You've got the. It's also the ancestral home of Lucille Ball. So there's a whole bunch of her stuff there. If you look online under National Comedy Center or look under Lucille Ball, Jamestown, they've got. A lot of her memorabilia and a ton of stuff, and really kind of an interesting the telling of her history and the history of Desilu, and then if you want, you go an hour and a half to Cleveland and go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then you can head up to also to complete the triangle. You can go to the Niagara Falls. It's kind of extraordinary. So the whole thing is well worth everybody's time, I think. Excellent.
And you know what? I'm growing up huge fan of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. I think the more and more I look into their relationship and the things that the innovativeness of their pairing together and things they put together is very reminiscent in my mind of the predecessor to like Harold Ramis and Bill Murray. Desi Arnaz was the person that could take all her comedy and talent and brilliance and wrangle it into something on TV in front of people. Same thing with Harold and Bill, where Harold was the only person that could wrangle Bill in and get him to do what he needed to do to be, the shining star that he was in front of people.
Yep.
So that's a good. I'm gonna have to make that pilgrimage out there, and I hope our listeners can as
well. You
well.
really should see it. It's. I went in, and I'd kind of been through it, and kind of been through. I'd never really been able to spend time, and then finally I had that opportunity, and I was always impressed. And I put them in. I know this stuff. I don't really need to. And then once I had time, I was overwhelmed. So. That's what I got to say.
Excellent. And I really want to appreciate and say thank you for your time today. It is a big, huge thing for me as a kid who grew up in Baltimore. I live in Boston now, but I grew up in Baltimore. And you're from D.C. Like, we're I feel like growing up, we're neighbors to DC. And so somebody who came from there and has done all the great, wonderful, talented things that you've been a part of was very inspiring for me to grow up to see, like, hey, here's somebody from similar neighborhood, similar town, similar place as me. And if he can do it, I can also do it as well. I'm not, but I'm trying.
You will, and take it easy. I mean, it took me forever, so don't sweat it, and have a good time. And then I really appreciate it, because it's the hardest thing right now is actually getting people to realize that you're coming to town. I'll walk into Boston, and I can guarantee you, walking to the theater, or around the theater, there'll be 10 people going, "What are you doing here?" It's really something. But so thank you.
Or 3 days later, you'll get that tweet was like, "Hey, when are you coming to town?" You're like, "I was just there."
Exactly. Oh boy, that's way too much. You're true. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You have a great day, and try not to exert yourself too much.
Don't worry, not going to happen. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. I love when everyone is so nice. He is great. And he didn't get mad that I did an impression of him in front of him. Also, all the technology worked today. Yay.